Well, good morning, everybody. All right, so bad news first. Inflation numbers came out. We still have inflation. Rates are going up. And the stock market is reacting in a way that you'd expect, which is that stock prices are going down. What those stock price movements tell us is that the financial community, people on Wall Street, are very much under the same impression that I am, which is that the more aggressive this inflation stays, the more aggressively I think the Fed is going to do whatever it takes to push us into a recession, and the faster that rates will come back down. So if you want to look at some silver lining, that's the good news. And Fannie Mae, as of this morning, is still predicting that Q1 will be the beginning of the recession. And so, like, we got to make it through the next few months. But I think they're going to tank this thing, and I think it's going to be aggressive. And so the more aggressive, stubborn the inflation is, the harder they'll go, and I think they're going to overshoot it. And then what you'll see is a reversal the other way. But this really does also then feed into our 2-1 buy down conversation here this morning. Because what is the perfect moment in time to be doing a 2-1 buy down? When rates have shot up and we fully expect them to come back down aggressively over the next year or two, right? How many of you guys feel like, from a theoretical high-level perspective, you understand a 2-1 buy down, how it works, where the money comes from, what it does for the borrower, and how that compares to other potential things you could do with that money in a way where you could explain it both to your referral partners and your borrowers right now? Raise your hand if you're like, I got this. Keep them raised, by the way, so I can look around and see. How many of you guys think that just from a conceptual standpoint, you could still use some work and review? It's okay, by the way. Cool. So I'm going to dive in. I'm going to go through some of the ways that I've been talking to realtors about this program and to borrowers conceptually. Okay. So, and by the way, there's a cool video on YouTube that I'll send out later from Mortgage Coach they put out, where they have kind of a tool where they've kind of broken it down for somebody that I think is useful in terms of showing it to somebody. But really, the way you want to mention, I don't have it written out like this, but you want to visualize this in 3 columns. Okay. If I'm buying a $400,000 house and I can get a $10,000 seller concession, right? There are essentially 3 things that I can do financially that will make sense for me with that $10,000. Okay. Number 1 is I can reduce the sale of the home price from $500 to $490. Save me about $50 a month. Save me about $8,000 in down payment, right? Or whatever is 10,000, whatever the numbers are there, $8,000 down payment. And great, cool. That's one option. Option 2 is I can take that money and put it towards a permanent buy down. In other words, buy discount points. So on a $400,000 loan, if I have $10,000, that's 2.5 points in discount points. You can get a pretty reduced rate if you throw on 2 points, and that's locked in forever. But in this environment where we think that, it's very likely that rates go down, that's probably not the best way. And so when I go over, you guys, what the 2-1 buy down option is versus that pay points option, on most programs, when I've done the math on this, the break even point is 4.5 years. So let me say what I mean by that. If you knew that rates were going to stay high for at least the next 4.5 years, it could make sense for you to do the permanent buy down versus the 2-1 buy down. Okay. But let's say you're like, wow, what happens if they don't go down the next 2 years? If rates in year 3 or in year 4, the 2-1 buy down will still save that borrower significantly more money than if they went with a permanent buy down of buying down their rate. Stop me if it doesn't make sense. Go, Beth, talk to me.
Just repeat that statement. Just repeat what you just said.
So if I'm deciding between a 2-1 buy down or using that as discount points to get a lower rate for the entire 30-year fixed, okay? The 2-1 buy down saves people the most amount of money in year 1 and then a bunch of money in year 2, and then it saves you nothing after that. The buy down on the 30-year fixed saves you a much smaller amount of money in every year forever. The break even point of where you would save as much money on the 30-year fixed buy down as you would on the 2-1 buy down is around 4.5 years. So the only way that it would make sense for you to not use a 2-1 buy down versus a permanent buy down is if A, you knew you'd be in this mortgage for more than 4.5 years. And B, you knew that, and because of that, you thought that rates would be likely to not come down significantly at any point over the next 4.5 years. Is that possible? Yes. If I had to give it a percentage chance, it's significantly less than 10%. That right now, today's rates are the lowest rates that we'll see for the next 4.5 years. Questions?
So you said the only way it makes sense to use the permanent buy down, or the only way it makes sense to use the 2-1 buy down?
It makes sense to use a 2-1 buy down in every scenario, which is about what I'm about to go over with you for right now. Unless you are like the type of person that is convinced that you know something and that rates are going to stay high, and you know that you're going to be in this house for more than 4.5 years. Okay. So if you know I'm buying this house, it's my forever home, and I believe that rates are going to, this is the lowest rates are ever going to be again, then cool, do the 30-year fixed discount points buy down. In any other scenario where you believe what all economists believe is that rates are likely to come down aggressively over the next couple of years, and certainly over the next 4 years, then the 2-1 buy down makes the most amount of sense. Okay. So you guys with me so far? Great.
Hey, Mark, just, and you're saying that this 4.5 year number kind of goes with many different scenarios in terms of purchase prices and stuff. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and by the way, the higher interest rates go overall, the bigger that difference will get. If that makes sense. So like it was like at 6%, it's like 4 years, and you have 7%, it's like 4.5 years. And so like it when I did the calculations. So like the more aggressively rates go up, the better the 2-1 buy down is versus the discount points. So great. Now the way that we want to be selling this is to realtors to tell them, hey, we're going to help you through this market. Because what's the number one worry, especially if you're a realtor that's a buy side realtor, and they have people who are looking to, first of all, who's looking to buy right now in this market? Is it who's like, hey, this is the time I still want to buy a house? Who is it?
People that already sold their house or need
Yeah,
to
well,
move for
that's a
work.
limited, yeah, for sure. But it's not really first time home buyers, right? Like if you have to sell a house to buy a new one right now, it's a really hard pill to swallow, because you have 3% on your current home, you're gonna have 7% on your new home. There's like no way to make that make sense, right? If you know, maybe if you're a cash buyer, you could say, okay, well, I think I can get a discount as prices come down. I'm looking a lot, but like if you're borrowing money and you have to give up your 3% to get 7%, it's a tough pill to swallow, right? So, but if you're renting, and we know that inflation's going up, and we know the inventory is still really low, and you're like, man, I'm wasting all this money on rent, right? Then it might still make sense for you to buy a house. Well, what would deter you from buying a house if you're a first-time home buyer? Being able to afford the monthly payment, right? And so when you started looking even 6 months ago at houses and the rates were in the 4s, and now they're at 7, right? Suddenly you're like, the house I thought I could afford, I can no longer afford. Simple as that. Hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month difference, even on a $300,000 or $400,000 purchase, because of interest rates between then and now. And what the 2-1 buy down does is it gives us an opportunity to navigate that. So if I'm a realtor, and by the way, the reason why, you would have seen 2-1 buy downs even sooner, but the reality is homes were flying off the market so fast you couldn't get a seller's concession. That's changed in most markets. Even here in Charleston, where there's still very low inventory, homes are sitting long enough where you can get those sellers concessions. And by the way, we're going to talk about how to talk to our sellers realtors about this as well, because I think we have some ways that we can kind of start to make you famous. We talked a little bit about it yesterday. So I'll give you, just a nice clean scenario. So if I do the discount points, maybe I save for the 30-year fix, maybe I'm saving $50 a month or $70 a month for 30 years. But if I do the 2-1 buy down, I'm saving $400 a month in year 1, $200 a month in year 2, right? And so that total savings ends up being pretty significant. You're talking about $7,000, $8,000. I mean, it would be whatever the equivalent of $10,000 would be if you had a $10,000 buy down. That would be what you're getting over that time period. And so when you have these options, talk to your buyer, what's most important to you? And if the what's most important to them is like, hey, I want to be able to afford this house right now. And by the way, I anticipate that rates will come down and I'll be able to refinance to a lower monthly payment as we go. Then the 2-1 buy down makes sense. And so for these realtors out there who are like, hey, I have somebody interested in buying, but they don't think they can afford anything, this is the solution. I'm going to stop there again because I know I'm giving a lot of information. I don't have a lot of visuals. Questions?
I mean, this is all riding on the fact that inflation will be under control by year 2.
By year 4, right? What we're really saying is that if the break-even point on this is year 4 or 4.5. So what we're saying is at some point over the next 4 years, the Fed will be able to curb inflation. Now, when I tell you that, when I listen to the people who know the most with this stuff, they will tell you recessions and depressions do not end democracies or overthrow governments, but inflation out of control absolutely does. That's what these people believe. And so with that thought in mind, you say, okay, what would they do to keep that stuff together? And the answer is whatever they need to, right? Now, the real worry, by the way, is global inflation, right? Because you have other countries who can make up their own policies with this stuff. But so far, we've been able to have some impact on what we're doing here. And I think there's still room for more because they can just pull money out of our economy. And inflation will stop when people have less of it. There's no way around that. Questions or thoughts around that? And again, by the way, if let's say the rates just do keep going up, right? Well, then they'll be pretty psyched about the 7% they have, right? If it's a 5% in the first year, 6% in year 2, 7% in year 3, and inflation never gets under control and rates are 12% 3 years from now, they're going to be like, cool, at least I got 7, right? And so like I think the 2-1 buy down is pretty low risk in that respect in terms of how people are going to feel about it as they go. Make sense? They're not going to call you 5 years from now and be like, oh, you should have given me the 6.5 for 30 years because rates are 12 now. You know what I mean? And they're still at 7. Am I losing people?
Mark, in that respect, it's better than a traditional ARM because you don't have the adjustment period. You've got a set floor.
Yeah. It's that ceiling. Yeah, absolutely. It's that ceiling. You can't ever go above that 7%, right? Questions, guys? Am I losing people? If you're here and you can put your cameras on, I'd love to see people's faces. It seems like there's a lot of people with no cameras. By the way, and this might be the last time I get to ask you to do that because starting next week, I think we're going to be doing training with a little bit of a different format. But we have 39 people on the training and 15 people with their cameras on. So, oh my God, I see somebody. They came on. Hi, Miguel. Nice to meet you. Cool, guys. So this is great. You have all this information and you can sell it to your borrowers because it makes sense. But the actual thing is here, the tool that this is, go ahead, Beth, you got a question?
Yeah, and again, newbie, but so
Beth, if you have the questions, everyone has them. They're just afraid to ask them. So you're just being brave. Don't feel bad about it. Keep asking.
I am afraid to ask, but anyway, what I'm telling them, and I know we can't guarantee rates, just like stockbrokers can't guarantee what a stock's going to do. So I never do that. I would never make that mistake. But I do tell them, based on what my branch managers tell me, who's awesome, is that with every recession in history, mortgage rates have come down. Now we can't predict history. Will repeat itself, but we do have that fact. That's a fact. And the other question I have is like if we're at 7% and they come down to 6, is that when they refi, or do they have to wait till it comes down to 5? How many points does it have to come down before you say we're going to be calling you for a refi?
Fred, can you answer this question for Beth? Did I lose you, Fred? Are you there? Is he on the phone with somebody else?
No, I'm here. I thought you said Brett.
Fred, tell me when should you refinance this person?
Don't call on me. Don't call on me.
Me personally, I mean, there's a lot of numbers involved in this, because sometimes there's closing costs, but I personally go with the whatever right for you. People's mindset is different. They're at different stages of their lives, so something that makes sense, like, oh well, your refinance is going to cost $3,000 today as opposed to 3 years from now, when they need the money, they need to save the money. They don't care how much they put on their mortgage. So I would just say whatever makes sense to them and leave it at that. Because
That's a very political answer from Fred. Here's my answer.
I'd be a lot more firm than that. I would say never use an interest rate as a barometer. Use the monthly payment as the barometer. If
Yes.
$50 helps you, do it. If $150 helps you, do it.
that's what I meant. I mean,
Yes, I know that's what you meant. So Beth, the way
It's not like they can't refinance again. If you refi them at 5 and then it comes down to 3, you just wait 6 months and you can refi them again. I mean, it's not like they're stuck to that one particular situation.
and further than that, Chrissy, when rates are going down, all of a sudden what you'll see is we get these super high yields on some of the rates that we'll have on our rate sheet. So if closing costs are a concern, let's say the rates go down to 5. Well, at 5.5, you'll be able to credit 2 points back to the borrower. There's all this room when rates go down at the top of the rate sheet that you don't see now. So like you look at the rates down, you're like, I'm charging points on every deal. When rates go down, you can credit points on every deal. And so you can reduce closing costs that way. If things go the way that we hope they go, a loan that you sell today should be 3 refis over the next 7 or 8 years. Right? Every purchase that you get today should be 3 more loans for you on refinances over the next 7 years if those people stay in that house. And by the way, a lot of the guys on this call built their houses and their careers and their bank accounts on the fact that they sold somebody a loan and then refinanced them multiple times on the way down. I have a couple clients that I had with investment properties where I did 12, 15 loans for them over a 5 or 6 year period, doing multiple refis on each one of those properties. And so for the loan officers that survive this environment and can keep doing purchase loans in the 7s, assuming that things go in a normal way, this will help you feed yourself and your family and make you money over and over again as we go forward, as long as you stay in front of those borrowers and continue to market to them. And so tremendous opportunity as rates go down to be able to do that.
I got a quick question, if you don't mind, since we're talking about that. If I had this question and realtors that I presented this to, if the borrower refinances within a year, what happens to that money that went into the escrow?
Gone forever.
That's what I told everybody, but I wasn't sure. Like, who keeps it? The title company? Like, where's it go?
I'm 90% sure this. I could be wrong. I'll check to make sure. And so if someone does something different than me, feel free to interrupt me. But it's prepaid interest. So it's no different than if you paid points to buy down your rate for 30 years. You wouldn't get that money back either.
Actually, I heard it goes towards principal reduction.
Exactly. That's what I thought too.
Any unused part of that goes to principal reduction.
I confirmed this with Jen Darling and Q yesterday. The leftover funds go toward the payoff. So when you refi, it's actually reduces the principal, right?
Sick.
Right.
So even better.
That's
Good.
a much
And
better answer.
there's no penalty to do that either.
Wow, I watched a bunch of videos in 2-1 Buydown and no one mentioned that. So that's cool. A good question, man. And I apologize for my rush to answer. What else, guys? Any other questions?
I do.
Cool. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So I just want to get that straight. So if there's leftover money from that concession, they would get it back at closing towards principal reduction.
It
So
actually they'd have a lower payoff on the mortgage. So in
Okay,
other words,
yeah.
let's say they only use $5,000 of the $10,000 in reduced monthly payments. Their payoff on the new mortgage, when the new mortgage company goes to pay off the old mortgage company, the balance would just be $5,000 less.
Okay, thank you.
What other questions do we have, guys?
Hey,
We
Mark.
got to be experts on this to go talk to our realtors this week.
What's a typical 2-1 buy down cost?
So it's the exact amount of interest savings so it really depends on the loan amount, right? But whatever the monthly savings is over that year 1 and year 2 is the upfront cost of the buy down.
So 5 to 10 grand's a safe number.
Yeah, I mean, in bigger loans it could be more, but yeah, I think on a $500,000 loan, I think 10 grand is like about where you're at. But yeah, run some scenarios on it, guys. Like, play with the numbers, get yourself familiar with it. I will say this. I think if you do a good job talking to your realtor partners about this, 2-1 buy downs could be more than half of the loans you do over the next 3 or 4 months. They should be. It is the best thing for your cut. Like sometimes these loan programs are like, oh, it's like a fairy dust program, or like it's kind of okay for this one type of person. Pretty much everyone buying right now should be looking for a seller's concession to do a 2-1 buy down, or to reduce the amount of their monthly payments that they're going forward with. There's no reason not to, because sellers are going to get used to giving them, sellers, realtors are going to get used to giving them, and so they're going to get those concessions, and it's going to save people money. And what you just heard, based on Russ's question, and the answer to it is that there's no risk in doing this versus just having the loan amount reduced, because if they don't use this money, the loan amount will be reduced and they do a refinance anyway, or if they sell the house. So there's no reason not to do it. Fred.
I actually have a question about this, and I didn't hear it last week, and I didn't think to talk about it, but let's just say you're going less than 10% down, and that 2-1 buy down cost is more than 3% on a conventional finance loan. Are you still capped at 3% seller concession? Did not answer that. I asked that last week.
I don't know the
You
answer
seller
to that.
concession, you're capped at 3%. So
I would assume so.
Yes, you're
Quinn
Okay.
confirmed yes on that.
okay.
yes.
Yeah. Let's become experts, guys. Let's get really good at these. Because I do think this is the opportunity. And by the way, as we make our power hour calls next week to realtors, and we're going to be doing them, you guys are cordially invited to hang out with me from 11 to 12 every day next week so that we can go ahead and make those power hours to realtors. We want to be talking about this project. We want to know what we're talking about. We want to answer the questions. And then we want to come back from that with other questions that we can do this together with. But this is the spot right now, the thing to be talking about, because it's so necessary. Again, rates this morning, over 20-year highs, highest I've ever seen them in my career, right? This is the moment for the 2-1 buy down conversation. It should be on the forefront of everyone's mind. So we have discussions with our realtors. I checked with and every MLS might be different, but I doubt it. I checked with CTAR, which is the Charleston Multiple Listing Service down here. And they said, while you cannot in the public notes on a listing include a loan officer or a specific type of loan program, you can in the private notes. And apparently every realtor, before, when they look at a listing, before they go look at the property or before they reach out to the realtor, where the information is for how you should schedule a showing of a house is in these private notes. And in those private notes, your sellers realtors can indicate to potential buyers agents that they are willing to do a 2-1 buy down, and they can even suggest a preferred lender for the 2-1 buy down. And so what an amazing thing for you to talk to sellers agents about. Hey, this would make you more likely to sell your property faster. It's a value add, right? It also helps you. It also advertises to every buyer's agent that looks at that listing that we have this program and that you're doing it. And so it helps you gain notoriety in your marketplace. And so you're providing value to both the buyer, the seller, and to yourself by having those different conversations about those private notes. Has anybody ever used that before? Like something that's kind of a new concept. Has anybody ever used that before, the realtor, to either have a seller's realtor talk about programs or loan officers, or ever heard of that before? Nobody? Brett, you have heard of that?
No, I was just saying that that's what I do. And when I call a realtor, the first thing I do is try to talk to them about a program that they don't know. So it gives me the excuse to call them and have a reason every time. Even if I talked to them earlier that week, just another checkpoint. Hey, we have this new program. Got to tell you about it.
I guess what I'm saying is what I was asking your referral partners about, your realtors about, is what are they putting in the private notes section? And have they ever thought about using that as a way to advertise what the sellers might be willing to do in terms of concessions to attract buyers? I think it's a strong opportunity. And I think it's something that we can coach them on and provide value on that would potentially work out for us as well. Right? Because by the way, not every lender is doing these 2-1 buy downs. And so like, let's say that the buyer's agent has a loan officer they prefer to use that doesn't do 2-1 buy downs. And then that's the buyer's agent, seller's agent, hey, do you know anybody? Then they're going to come to you because you specialize in these programs.
So, Mark, I think that's great advice. I can only speak for myself, although I'm in a lot of states that other people are in. But the feedback that I got from the email that went out over the weekend regarding sellers concessions, as well as our conversation and other meetings, a lot of the real estate agents are saying that they're not seeing that yet. So I don't know what if anyone else is getting that feedback, but a lot of real estate agents, a lot in Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas to some degree, are saying that like in their market that isn't the norm. Even though I'm pretty sure by winter that's where we're going to be headed to sell houses is massive seller concessions. Just want to give you the feedback of what some real estate agents are saying.
Yeah, I think actually that's awesome, by the way, to hear, because I think now you give them an opportunity to be a front runner on this. It's obviously coming. And so if you're planning to list the house for 500, is it better in this market to list it for 510? Because by the way, there's no buyer that's either looking or not looking at your house because of 500 or 510. If they're interested, right? And I've talked to a bunch of real estate agents about that. So is it better to go to market right now with a 510 price with a private note for a $10,000 seller concession towards cost than it is to go at 500,000 and see what happens? And I don't know the answer to that, but unless people are still seeing bidding wars, I think it's a pretty safe way to approach it, right? Hey, maybe this is the market where you can entice some people to buy or look at your house that wouldn't have really looked at it because you have this creative way of listing it that's making it a better option for people. Because I do think that's where we're headed anyway. You might as well, there might be some realtors who'd be looking at get out in front of it. What other questions?
That is the big push here in California to not, they're telling sellers, instead of doing a price reduction, do the 2-1 buy down.
Yeah.
Or give the seller concessions to do the 2-1 buy down.
I would say this is the first time in a long time for me. It's like since HARP, basically. When HARP came out, you were like, this is amazing. We should refinance everybody, right? Like for you guys who don't know, you can Google it. But like after the Great Recession, there were like some refinance programs that were just like no-brainers for people to do. This is kind of in that spot right now. The 2-1 buy down is not a new product. In fact, some of the videos that I watched on it went all the way back to 2018. But there's never been a better opportunity or moment for something that I've seen where we should be going out and having these conversations. And by the way, I saw a video posted from a very successful realtor this week that they had 90 conversations with real estate agents last week, and the vast majority of them did not know at all about the 2-1 buy down or did not understand any of the ways it worked. Said it was like 10 or 15 out of 90 that knew it, right? And so it may seem like new information to you, or they may do things like, yeah, I've heard of it. It's like, but they don't know how it works. More importantly, they don't know how to use it to help their clients, right? And so when these conversations will be very focused on, hey, listen, this isn't about how to get me a loan. This is about your buyers will benefit from this right now and all the things that we just talked about. And by the way, your sellers may also potentially benefit from it if they know how to position themselves. And so that's how we add value as an expert. So how do you want a realtor to fall in love with you and want to use you every time? If you teach that realtor something that can help them grow their business, that's a rare thing in a loan officer realtor relationship. And you can provide that value. That's how you'll make somebody a raving fan. Right? So by the way, even if you think you have a good handle on this, I recommend going and doing some of your own Google research on 2-1 buy downs, watch the videos, watch stuff that expert loan officers are saying out there. Make yourself an expert on it because I do think it's the product of the moment. And here's the good news. If we work really hard at getting good at these 2-1 buy down informations, then the world will make rates go down so that we don't need them anymore because of all the time we'll get punished for all the work that we did, and then that will help us all out anyway. That's a karma thing, guys. I'm joking. I don't see a lot of people who followed my humor there. Yeah, the more time we spend talking about what to do when rates go higher, I think we can potentially make them lower. Questions, Paige?
Do they, and I know this is correct when I say this, but they qualify with the higher rate, correct?
Yes, they have to qualify the higher rate, and that higher payment and rate will be on the documents for the loan.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, good questions, guys. How many of you guys right now feel comfortable calling a bunch of realtors and having these conversations? Cool, we're going to do it together. It's going to be so fun. If you guys don't feel comfortable, when you're uncomfortable, it means you're growing, and you should be excited about that.